All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of grade 9 biology, specifically zeroing in on the cycling of matter, right alongside communities, biomes, and ecosystems. Our main objective here is to explore exactly how organisms interact with one another across totally different scales, and how these invisible, deeply complex chemical cycles sustain literally all of these living systems. We're going to see how life is completely interconnected, from a single, tiny butterfly all the way up to the entire planet.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with population ecology, expand into community ecology, check out terrestrial biomes and aquatic ecosystems, dive into the cycling of matter, and finally finish up with a quick recap.
Section 1. Population Ecology, focusing on one species.
So what exactly is a population? Well, it's a group of interbreeding organisms of the exact same species, living in the exact same area at the very same time. The crucial takeaway here is that a population only includes members of the same species, which scientists call conspecifics. And these populations are always bounded by geography. That could mean natural borders, like rivers and mountains, or even artificial ones like mowed grass or a highway. So if you're out counting the number of one specific type of butterfly in a single pine barren, you are officially studying population ecology.
Section 2. Community ecology, interacting species.
Now, zoom out just a little bit with me. While a population is just one species, a biological community shifts our focus to all the different species living within a shared area. Unlike a population, a community involves heterospecifics. That's just a fancy way of saying members of different species. At this level, ecologists are looking at how all these different species actually interact with one another in their three-dimensional space. We're talking about intense interactions like predation, parasitism, or mutualism.
And this is where things get really cool. Let's look at a quick case study that brilliantly illustrates community ecology in action. The Carner blue butterfly is this rare species that relies entirely on a plant called wild lupine just to lay its eggs. But it gets even wilder. The butterfly larvae, the caterpillars, have actually co-evolved a mutualistic relationship with certain species of ants. The caterpillars secrete this carbohydrate-rich substance specifically to feed the ants. In exchange for this awesome energy source, the ants act as bodyguards, protecting the vulnerable caterpillars from predaceous insects and spiders. Both the butterfly larvae and the ants benefit. It's an absolutely perfect example of a community interaction among heterospecifics.
Section 3. Terrestrial biomes, ecosystems on land. If we want to understand biomes, we have to look at the ecosystem level. An ecosystem basically takes the biological community, so all those interacting living things we just talked about, which we call biotic factors, and combines them with the abiotic or non-living components of the area. Abiotic factors are things like the air, water, soil, temperature, and rainfall. On a massive global scale, variations in these abiotic factors are exactly what create the major biomes of Earth.
Just think about how varying two major abiotic factors, temperature and precipitation, divides the Earth into these 8 vastly different terrestrial biomes. For instance, if you have highly stable, warm temperatures and a ton of rainfall, you end up with the incredibly diverse tropical wet forest, totally packed with evergreen, broad-leafed trees. But if you flip that and have extreme heat with virtually zero rainfall, you get a subtropical desert where plants literally have to have deep roots or water-storing stems just to survive. Move to regions with cold, dry winters, and you'll find the boreal forest, dominated by pine trees. Keep heading north into the bitter cold, and you hit the Arctic tundra, where the soil stays permanently frozen as permafrost, and only the toughest, low-growing plants and lichens can scrape by.
Section 4. Aquatic ecosystems, the hydrosphere.
But hey, the Earth isn't just dirt and trees, right? While terrestrial biomes are largely defined by the climate, our planet's diverse aquatic ecosystems form the other massive half of the biosphere. Water is quite literally the basis of all living processes. But get this, 97.5% of the water on Earth is non-potable salt water. Of the tiny bit of remaining fresh water, 99% of it is locked underground or frozen solid as ice. That means less than 1% of all fresh water is actually accessible in lakes and rivers for the terrestrial ecosystems that desperately depend on it.
Section 5. The cycling of matter, biogeochemical cycles.
Okay, misconception check time. You might think that when plants pull nutrients from the soil, or when animals drink water, that matter is somehow just used up, like it disappears. That is completely false. As this quote perfectly highlights, the matter that makes up living organisms is conserved and recycled. Elements like carbon, water, nitrogen, and phosphorus are infinitely conserved and recycled through what we call biogeochemical cycles. They move from the living world to the non-living world and back again, over and over, like an endless cosmic recycling plant.
Let's look at the nitrogen cycle in terrestrial systems as a really prime example of this recycling. Nitrogen is absolutely critical for building our DNA and proteins. Here is how it cycles in 3 major steps. Step 1 is aminification. Specific bacteria and fungi convert nitrogenous waste from living or dead animals straight into ammonium. Step 2 is nitrification. Other highly specialized bacteria take that ammonium and convert it into nitrites and then nitrates, which plants can easily absorb. Finally, step 3 is denitrification. Completely different bacteria convert those leftover nitrates back into nitrogen gas, releasing it right up into the atmosphere to start the whole amazing process all over again.
But what happens when we throw a wrench into these delicate gears? When human activities overload these natural cycles, specifically by dumping excess phosphorus and nitrogen onto the soil through artificial fertilizers, it runs off into our rivers and lakes. This causes a massive, destructive disruption called eutrophication. Basically, the excess nutrients trigger this explosive, unnatural growth of microorganisms in the water. When those microorganisms eventually die, their decomposition entirely depletes the dissolved oxygen in the water, which literally suffocates and kills off the other aquatic life.
A perfect and kind of tragic example of this is our analysis model, the Chesapeake Bay Dead Zone. The Chesapeake Bay, located in the eastern United States, is a textbook example of an ecosystem in severe distress because of disrupted biogeochemical cycles. See, more than 150 rivers and streams empty into this bay, carrying surface water runoff that's totally loaded with excess nutrients from agricultural fertilizers, plus runoff from urban lawns and gardens. This massive nutrient dump has created huge dead zones, completely depleting the oxygen and wiping out bottom-dwelling species like clams, oysters, and fish. It shows us exactly why maintaining balanced biogeochemical cycles is absolutely critical for the survival of entire ecosystems.
All right, before we wrap things up, let's do a quick check to see what's stuck. Think back to earlier in our explainer. When the Karner blue butterfly interacts with those tending ants to survive, does that relationship represent a population or community? Takes just a second to think about it.
If you guessed a community, you hit the nail right on the head. Because the butterfly and the ants are members of completely different species, remember our vocabulary word, heterospecifics, this mutualistic interaction is a flawless example of community ecology. Now, if we were only looking at the butterflies interacting with other butterflies, that would just be a population.
Section 6. Recap. Bringing it all together.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. We started small, looking at populations of a single species, or conspecifics. We saw how they interact with heterospecifics to form vibrant, dynamic communities. Then we zoomed out, combining those living communities with abiotic factors like temperature and precipitation to form full ecosystems. We explored how those abiotic factors map the Earth into 8 distinct terrestrial biomes and vast aquatic ecosystems. And finally, we realized that the invisible thread tying this whole shebang together is the cycling of matter. The water, carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus that build the butterfly, the biome, and, well, you, are never lost. They are infinitely recycled, sustaining all life on Earth. So the very next time you drink a glass of water or just take a deep breath, ask yourself, what ancient ecosystems or even dinosaurs might that exact same matter have been a part of millions of years ago? Keep wondering, and I'll catch you in the next one.